Okay, there we are. Welcome, folks, to Quantum Leap Live. And I'm just still getting set up here. I'm going to get rid of that background beeping. So, my name's David Kirsten. The show's Quantum Leap. And we have a special guest today, Katie Macks, who's really a very timely guest in this time. She has a lot of tools about getting through this environment that we're in, dealing with trauma, staying focused. She calls it audacious leadership. I think it's really a number of other things about, managing ourselves. But first, I wanted to get to Cory and I and welcome you back, Cory. And if you don't mind just telling us who you are and if you want to say a few words about your trip, we'd love to hear what you were up to.
Oh yeah, so Cory and I here, and business coach with Take Wing Coaching, and yeah, just got back from a trip with my wife and business partner on going through the national parks in Utah, and then of course watching the eclipse in Utah. It's kind of our anniversary, so our 18th, and yeah, always makes for an interesting time. She takes the car with our daughter, and I ride behind on the motorcycle or follow my own route, and we meet up at different places.
Oh, great. Yeah, I saw the pictures of you watching the eclipse. Was that actually on your anniversary, the eclipse day?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
yeah. Wow.
yeah.
Okay. Good. I know you guys always do some great outdoor trips. I love seeing all the national parks and stuff you guys go to. And, I think that's a great escape too. And in this environment, I realize a lot of the crib sheets I'm writing these days are really about relating to these times that we're living in with war and unrest and political polarization and chaos and of course um death as well, some very traumatic experiences. And that's what we're going to actually talk to Katie about, in part because we all have to really learn how to function or relearn or really cope and be able to survive during these times. So, Katie, Cory's known Katie for a while from being on. She gave a great presentation last week. We're going to put out the video hopefully at some point, so you can hear more about her. We're going to talk a lot about those issues today, but I wanted to first get to you, Katie, and if you don't mind just telling us who you are and what you do, and why it's particularly relevant in the world that wewe're living in.
Okay, well, thank you. I first want to say thank you for having me, and I also want to say happy anniversary to Cory and Gail.
Thank you.
And I just am so grateful to be here. I'm so grateful that BNI has brought us together. And I feel so strongly that community is part of what makes us feel better. So thank you for bringing me into this mix. I really appreciate it. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Katie Macks. I am a leadership coach, self-leadership. The name of my business is Audacious Leadership. And my business just continues to evolve because I continue to evolve. And something that's really happened through COVID is in self-leadership, I've gotten really tuned into trauma work and helping people move through their trauma, release their trauma to engage with their joy, to ignite their joy. And it is so timely because we've been on a trajectory, really, I believe, since probably the beginning of time, but really, I'm just going to speak in the last 4 years. There's just been so much that's taken place that we have not necessarily been equipped to deal with, and it's not our fault. I just want to say that it's just really big stuff has happened, and it's just been really hard for people to navigate, starting with the isolation and now all of the unrest. It's just been very dysregulating to our nervous systems. And so I feel like if I can help people get back to a regulated state within their bodies, within their spirit, within their mind, we can tune into what really matters to us and make choices that are aligned with who we are and what matters to us. And that's really my commitment in helping people find their way back to themselves so they find their confidence, their joy, and just things that they can live their life in a way that's in alignment with their heart and soul. So
Thank you. And I know it's different degrees, as we were talking about before we got started. You had mentioned that some people who can't even talk about it, or people are really isolated in some cases, and they deal with this trauma in different ways. So, I, for example, find it's with myself, it's about different degrees a bit in that, if you really get really under it, it's harder to function, but the kind of the healthier you get or the better coping you get, a lot of those more normal things come back. And I think we still have to, connect with people. We still have to have a good time and do dinners and be social and not feel bad about, having joy even during these times, even though it is harder at times, and, but also, sharing in the grief, of course, too, of a lot of the things that are happening. So, with that, I just wanted to just ask you about what are some of the key issues you see going on in this environment? I know you've been teaching leadership and this trauma management or really a lot of different things for a while. So you've probably seen the difference during COVID versus 5 years before that, or maybe under more normal times. If you don't mind talking a little bit about what you see out there now and how that's a bit different from normal times. And I assume some of the tools are still different, because even when times are good, people go through some of the worst trauma and nobody even it's like our own battle, so to speak.
Yeah, well, first, I just to give the audience like an understanding of trauma in a really kind of simplistic way. The world, we're experiencing collective trauma, which I call kind of the big T traumas, which are war, climate change, hatred, like all the things that have kind of been unleashed that we're all affected by. Those are big T traumas. And then there's little T traumas, which are the experiences that we have day in and day out, whether people dismiss us, judge us, bully us, I call those more like paper cuts, where we have kind of a reaction, but we just keep going. We sometimes don't even recognize it. And I think that people are so worn out between the big T traumas and the little T traumas. That's what I'm really seeing. And in that state of being so worn out, people don't have the energy to engage the way they used to engage. And I also think that, the isolation has been so confusing for people, because there was a part of what happened during COVID where some people felt really relieved. Some people had so much anxiety not having contact. And now that the world is kind of opened up with all of the volatile stuff, people don't know how to re-engage because they're worn out, right? And that is a state of depression. Like, we have depressed energy, right? Which is just really challenging for so many people. And what I'm really seeing is people are just not wanting to engage. It's too painful. It's too much, especially now with what's going on with what occurred in Palestine and Israel. It's just really hard for people to engage. And I also think people don't know who to trust, how to trust. And part of the work that I do with people is really bring things back home, meaning we must trust ourselves. We must engage with ourselves first, right? Like we are conditioned to be so outwardly focused. And I can share a little bit about that in a minute, about how I got, or maybe I will with Cory, about how I got into this work. But there's just a state of safety comes from within. Safety does not come from without. And when we look at the world that feels so unsafe, we need to rely on ourselves to bring safety to ourselves, self-trust, and a self-honoring to where we're at with our feelings, our thoughts, and to get the support we need. And that happens in community, it happens one-on-one. But I think people feel like they need to figure this out on their own to get through it. And the bottom line is we really need each other, and the isolation just perpetuates people's pain.
Yeah, well put. And I was explaining a bit what you do to my mom, and I'm going to send her that video. But we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the different things you do. I know you put on a webinar that you had about 40 people in attendance online, and you just spoke about these issues, and it was so therapeutic to just, number one, just having the awareness of what's going on, because I think when you deal with things by yourself, you don't have a full understanding. You just feel it, but you're kind of like frozen in large part. So how do you get kind of unfrozen? And if you don't mind just telling us a little bit about that talk and just what your process is for working with clients if somebody wants to maybe join one of your seminars or looking at working with you.
Okay. So I love you bringing this up, David, because we're not meant to do this alone, right? And most of us are in trauma responses in our life, which is normal. And I'm here to normalize everything. Normalize being human, normalize the humanity, normalize that we weren't taught how to actually move through things. We were taught to cope, and that's really different than living, right? So in the trauma responses, when it's either a big T trauma or a little T trauma, most of us armor up and just get really defended in life. And so there are 4 trauma responses, and one that you brought up, David, which is we freeze, right? Like we just get really overwhelmed and we freeze. And it's almost like our life force energy just gets so depressed that we can't function. And that is a very debilitating response. And actually, in all the responses that I'm going to explain, it is, it truly has no energy. So it's really hard to get out of it. And I just want to say, if you feel that stuck, I just invite you to reach out to someone that you know loves you and can support you, right? Because like that first step will really help. The other 3 responses are fight, flight, and fawn, right? So along with freeze. So fight is you just get bigger, you get more defensive, you get kind of arrogant. There's just a whole lot of defensiveness that goes on with fight. That actually, in as far as having energy, is a good sign because you still have energy, which is important to move through things, right? The flight is we just want to avoid. So we'll get out of there really quick. Like we just are like, I can't deal with this. I'm going to move on to something else. So for example, in the times we're in, it's like, I can't deal with this. I'm going to avoid, I'm going to go away. And it's just, it keeps us separate, right? And it's fear driven. All of our responses are fear driven and anxiety driven. And then there is fawn, and fawn is something that I really have used in my life. Because I never felt like I belonged. So I would fawn and I would overgive and I would like, I wouldn't really deal with what was going on. I'd put my needs aside to actually meet other people's needs. So for people who are people pleasers, that's a real hook of a trauma response, right? And what I want to say about all of them, fight, flight, freeze, and fawn, is they are normal. This is what goes on in our nervous system. And we actually developed these when we were really young, when we didn't know how to cope with what we didn't understand. So for all the listeners, if you are having these responses, which most of us do, there's nothing wrong with you. There's everything right with you. The difference is we actually now have the opportunity through my work, through other people's work, to navigate the responses in a way to regulate your system so that you're not in a defended state. All 4 of those are a defended state. Because we're looking for self-protection, because we don't feel safe. We don't know what's going on, and there's a lot of trust issues. So I help people navigate the responses through getting regulated. And one thing I think it's really important to share with everyone is that when I talk about trauma, and all of us, I believe, have experienced trauma, the work I do with people isn't necessarily going back and delving into the pain and the agony of our trauma. It's about noticing the response that is going on and being able to soothe and calm your nervous system so that you can come back to center and make choices that are in alignment with you, so that you actually take your power back rather than giving it away to all the circumstances in our life. So it's very forward facing. And it doesn't mean that people can't talk to me about their past traumas, but the point is, how do we soothe ourselves in a way to bring us back to center so that we can engage, so that we can feel better, so that we can find our joy, so that we can be connected with ourselves and others, so that we can love ourselves the way we really desire to be loved in the world. There's so many things that we can become when we regulate our nervous system. It's everything to me.
Thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Cory here. Just a time check, Cory, we have about 9 minutes. And I was going to, since I forgot to ask you about that, if you don't mind just telling us how you know Katie, and if you have any thoughts on how you cope during this environment, Cory, about getting your business done. And I know you're doing a lot of great stuff with your business, if this has been challenging to you as well.
Let's see, when did we meet, Katie? Probably when you were at Success Link, and I joined the chapter as a relationship business coach or business relationship coach. And Katie actually worked with me for a while in that. She came to our programs, and I think we had quite a bit of success there. And then I worked with Katie, as did my wife Gail. And so we've known each other a long time, and I'm glad to see her come back into BNI. I know there's a lot that was going on during a certain period of time, and we didn't see much of each other as we made changes in our business too. For me, it's interesting. I think there used to be a talk show. So I used to listen to a lot of talk radio when I was working lots of hours in the project management field, and I would just throw on KGO and listen to this, different talk shows all day. And one of them was Jim Beeson, and I always, he would always just iterate, it's like if things are just turn off the news, just don't even watch it, because I was a news junkie when I was younger in the 80s, and so on. I just I'd always have the news on and everything else. And so I kind of just did that. I just okay, forget it, I'm not going to read the newspaper anymore. Sometimes I'd read the opinion columns, and that's about it, and the comics and Business Times, but never, I wouldn't just because there's nothing you can do about it. Right. And I think that's where people really feel powerless, is there's just so little that can be done. I think we have to make our voices heard and do various things. And I think there's a lot of ways to do that, but it's too easy to get into an echo chamber of just this information being fed to us. And there's just nothing I can do about what's going on halfway around the world. Even locally, there's very little that can be done. So rather than just let it feed in and feed the fear, it's turn it off and then see how you feel. Right, and what's really going on, because there's plenty of internal crap that we have to deal with. Katie just posted something on Facebook, what's your favorite quote? And there was another one I just read yesterday, was life as in sports, the boo section is usually from the most booing comes from the cheap seats, right? And that's kind of internal too. So that's one of the ways I cope, and I think it really helps. And because I think more personal issues can derail with me, like when my friend had cancer, and it looked like he wasn't going to make it. That was a really rough time for me, and that's enough. I don't need to deal with more than that. So Katie, let's kind of get into your why. I don't want to take too much time here because we got time check.
Okay. So. Well, I'm going to just kind of riff off of what you said, Cory, and I so appreciate it, which is, what's going on in the whole world. I used to be an activist, as so many people know. I've spent my life, standing for justice for others, and it was all very passion driven for me. And what's really changed is the work that I do is called inner activism, which is connected to my why. Because if I fought for justice out there, I was not included in that. I was so outwardly focused to stand for things for others, but I never felt like I had the justice within myself. And so the work that I'm doing, I call inner activism, which is healing the divides that are within us, healing the disconnected pieces that are within us. And I know that, my early childhood was filled with trauma, and I just didn't understand why we were all here and why there was so much pain in the world. And so I went on a learning journey, which I am still on at the age of 63, because there is so much to learn, so much to grow into, so much to heal, that I have found so much personal freedom, which is what that's one of my top values, by doing the work, by healing the things that have caused so much pain. And I I feel so grateful that I want to pass that on to humanity. I feel like I have so much wisdom through the journey I've been on that I can help people move from where they are, that is a pain-based area, to a area with joy and pleasure, that changes the way you engage with your life and others and in your relationships, and with the world at large. So that's my why. And I want the world to be a better place, right? Like, I want people, like, when we find peace within, we can actually create peace without. But if we are so struggling and we are so blocked, it's really hard to make any progress, which also goes out into the ethers, into the world. So
Cora, I was going to say, feel free to skip that B&I question if you have a wild card question. I
I
think we
don't really have one. I would say that there is definitely a lot of people out there who, speak to these things, but they don't really have that internal peace, and or don't know how to connect to it, as rapidly. They got it once and they're like, okay, now I can do this for others. And it's challenging, there's a lot to build, the knowledge and the wisdom and the spiritual aspect. So I know Katie's done that, and that's, where my work goes. And yeah, and so I think we help people cope, and Katie does that through, building that internal leadership, right? Which is a great way to put it. Yeah, well, so who is your ideal client, Katie?
my ideal clients are people that really are curious about how to find a way to live that's truly in alignment with themselves. Most of my clients are between, do you hear my dog or?
No, not really.
Good. Okay, he's going
fine.
crazy right now. He saw a squirrel, so I just wanted to make sure it wasn't coming through. My clients are really between the ages 40, 45 until 75. People that have really lived, but kind of are disillusioned with how life has turned out and really wanting to find a better place, for themselves, their families, and to really find their own joy. And I think when we kind of get through having a family and doing those things like, we start to assess things in a different way. And my clients are really hungry for a better world, and it starts with themselves. And so I think people who want something better in the world and realize they have to start with themselves are the people that are like, I want to work with you. So those are my ideal clients.
Great. Well put. We'll put the link to your website too.
Oh,
just
I
so
want to say my website's being, it's under construction, and it will be up like within a week or two. So I just want to.
Okay.
I know the feel. I'm in the same boat.
Yeah.
Who's constructing your website, Katie?
There's a woman who's in Florida that I am connected with, so I can connect you with her. Aja.
Where is your website hosted?
It is Squarespace.
Oh yeah, I want to talk to her then.
Okay.
Ours is Squarespace too. Yeah, and just yeah.
Okay, perfect. I will refer her.
Please.
Right
Soon.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have the content. I just need the layouts. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same.
Yeah, I can put your LinkedIn or something else too, or your email, if that's okay. Yeah.
And you can put, if you want to put Facebook, because that I do a lot of really fun stuff on Facebook. So like,
Okay.
yeah, so that's good.
Okay, very good. Well, we're at time here, and thanks for coming on to talk about these issues. I'm sure we'll be having you back at some time soon. And folks, do check her out when she's going to be speaking live to Oakland Rotary. We're looking forward to that. We don't have a date set, but come visit with Katie, and just keep an eye out for what she has going on. So great to chat with you, and we'll be seeing you soon, Katie.
Thank you so much.
Bye, everyone. Stay tuned for the next segment coming up shortly. Thank you.